Story 1. Never let an intoxicated person sleep flat on their back. I almost died in my teenage years the first time I got drunk. I passed out in a room away from the party and was found by a friend choking on my vomit. Story 2. Even if you have crossed the same dormant train track near your home for 10 years, when it is used again, trains will run long before a safety gate is installed. Story 3. Neat little islands on big rivers are farther than they appear. I am not a good swimmer, but thankfully my brother is. Story 4. Do not ever think you are too young to have a heart attack. Please remember that women's symptoms and men's symptoms can be very different. At 54, I had a heart attack and 2 stents were placed. The next day, while I was still in the hospital, I had a second heart attack. If it had not been for jaw pain and severe nausea, I would have ignored the tingling down my arm and the slight chest pain and tried to go to sleep. Please do not ignore any symptoms, no matter how minor they may seem. Do not take chances. Call emergency services by dialing 911. Story 5. When I almost died, I learned that the small everyday moments are the big ones. A hug, a laugh, and a shared coffee were what I saw flashing through my mind, not money or achievements. Now I live more slowly, love more deeply, and try not to take a single sunrise for granted. Story 6. Ectopic pregnancies are real and can be life-threatening. Before I had one, I had never heard of them. Apparently, neither had the staff at the hospital. They confirmed I was pregnant and performed ultrasound scans to locate the pregnancy. Once they identified the ectopic pregnancy, they could not treat me immediately and had to call specialists from another facility. I do not know how I survived. I was bleeding internally for days. It was days before I called 911 for the second time about the pain, the first time I was sent home. Story 7. I learned this from my brother, who died. If you see red blood in your stool, see a doctor immediately and get second and third opinions. A doctor told my brother he had hemorrhoids and lasered them off. He was in horrific pain and refused to see a doctor for another 6 months. He finally went, because the pain was so bad. A second doctor said the first doctor was wrong. He had colon or anal cancer and the cancer was lasered. By then it was stage 4. He passed away about a year later after chemotherapy, surgery, radiation therapy, and daily medication that cost $1,000 per pill. If you see blood in your stool, get more than one opinion. Red could mean hemorrhoids, a cut, or cancer. Black stool can indicate internal bleeding. See a doctor right away. He was 37, so he had not had a routine colonoscopy. I do not know what stage he was in when he first saw the doctor, but early detection helps a lot. Stage-specific 5-year survival rates are approximate. Stage 1, around 90 to 92%. Stage 2, approximately 85 to 89%. Stage 3, about 65 to 74%. Stage 4, roughly 10 to 15%. I have seen some responses about insurance. Our insurance system is overall good, but there are problems. If you are over a certain age or have a family history of colon cancer, you can get a colonoscopy completely free. However, if they find polyps, it is often no longer covered as a screening. It becomes a diagnostic procedure and you may have to pay your deductible and up to your annual out-of-pocket maximum. That can lead to large medical bills and may discourage some people from having the procedure. Also, make sure every provider is in your insurance network. Anesthesiologists can charge a lot and may not be in network even if your doctor is. It is tricky. Story 8. The moment my child is born, I'm putting them in swimming lessons. Story 9. Vague symptoms of ovarian cancer include sudden fatigue, personality changes, abdominal pain, and a sense of doom. Story 10. You can run 100 yards while unconscious after you have just hit a tree while driving at 70 miles per hour. Story 11. If your leg hurts and you are short of breath, those symptoms may be related and could be fatal. Pulmonary embolism. Story 12. Sometimes the people you think are a good support system during a crisis are the ones who cause you more trauma. Story 13. You should not hit 9mm ammunition scattered on the patio with a hammer. Story 14. Blowing bubbles when you urinate is a bad sign. Diverticulitis caused a fistula between my bowel and my bladder. which allowed an Escherichia coli infection that nearly led to sepsis and death. I thought I had a bad urinary tract infection, but it was much worse. Story 15. Don't swim under a shipyard pier at night. I lost my sense of direction. I got lucky and found my way out. Story 16. No. In fact, I would not be motivated to live a healthier life. Story 17. Do not have pool parties with friends who will shove your head underwater. Story 18. It takes surprisingly little snow to stop a sport utility vehicle traveling at highway speed without brakes. Story 19. After my wife passed away, I went straight from work to home. 6 months later, my aorta ruptured and I almost died. After a long hospital stay and recovery, I realized how fragile life is. I got my life together and decided it was time to live again. I met someone and fell in love. We have been to over 30 states, Canada, and Mexico. I have worked on my health and lost 60 pounds. Life is short. Live it to the fullest. Story 20. After my treatment, many people told me what they would do if they were diagnosed with a brain tumor. Vacations, sex, drugs, and shopping sprees. I let them dream about all the wonderful things they would do if they believed they were dying, and I kept to myself the truth that you have to keep paying rent, change the oil in your car, and brush your teeth just in case you live. Story 21. When the first one seems to be taking too long to kick in, do not take another. Story 22. I learned the real signs of carbon monoxide poisoning. I thought I had the flu until my detector went off. Story 23. I didn't realize bone was actually incredibly white until I saw my own skull. Story 24. I realized who I could rely on in a life or death situation. My husband is a keeper. Story 25. Say what you want. Stand up for what you believe in. When you are in a position of power, use it to speak up for those who cannot. Remember, you were not always where you are now. Story 26. Life is fleeting and impermanent. Make the best of it every moment you can. Story 27. If someone stabs you, do not remove the weapon. I was stabbed when I was about 14 during some neighborhood trouble. When I came to, I was alone and the knife was still in me. Before I could make it back to my buddy's house for help, I pulled the knife out and immediately passed out again at the sight of my own blood. I felt weak for weeks from the blood loss. It is a wonder I walked away from that. Story 28. Expelling large amounts of water from the lungs feels like vomiting. Before I almost drowned, I assumed the water had to be removed mechanically or by chest compressions, but it can come out on its own, much like a gag reflex. I later learned that the lungs do not always expel all of the water. Even very small amounts of leftover water can cause drowning later or lead to pneumonia. If you almost drown, you should always seek medical attention at a hospital, even if you think you have coughed everything up and feel fine. Story 29. Perception of time changes during a life or death event. During the 5 seconds I was airborne in a 1986 beige tempo in the winter of 1994, I made peace with my entire life and calmly prepared for the end as if days had passed, not seconds. Thank God a massive snowbank absorbed the impact. Story 30. Endometriosis can develop into cancer. Endometrioid ovarian adenocarcinoma. Keep fighting for care. Make them listen even though it is exhausting and feels futile. Story 31. You can have a large portion of your liver removed, and it will grow back. Hemochromatosis is debilitating. Story 32. When your body tells you something, listen. If you notice new pain, a lump under your skin, or significant changes in memory or sleep, get it checked by a medical professional. Medical visits can be inconvenient and expensive, but you owe it to yourself and your loved ones to take responsibility for your health. If a minor symptom stems from an acute or time-sensitive condition, early detection could save your life or greatly improve your health outcomes. Story 33. Leave a house with toxic mold as soon as possible, even if it costs a lot of money. Story 34. I died in a car accident. Death does not hurt. You do not feel anything. There are no sounds, only light and shadows. Story 35. I don't think I will be freaked out about dying. I actually had the strange thought flit through my head. This is what it's like? But that feeling did not last, so maybe the actual experience will be different. Story 36. 1. Having a 105-degree fever feels kind of neat. 2. It hurts sharply when a major artery tears internally. Story 37. If you have high blood pressure during the third trimester of pregnancy, listen to the doctors. They are speaking from experience, not arrogance. Your baby may have low birth weight for an extended period. You may need to be readmitted for jaundice. People may ask for about a year why your baby is small and may not understand when you explain that your blood pressure reached 159/151. Your liver may ache for about a year. Story 38. Sometimes the body stacks illnesses on top of one another. I had 4 illnesses at once. Influenza A, H1N1, the stomach flu, bronchitis, and an ear infection. I couldn't breathe, sleep, eat, drink, or hear. Things got worse after several days and I missed school. My father checked on me, and I told him, "Dad, I can't breathe." My lips were turning blue. He rushed me to the local urgent care, where they found I needed very strong antibiotics, 2 different types, plus an inhaler and pain medication. One of the bacterial infections was beginning to spread toward my spinal cord and could have led to encephalitis and death if my father had not acted in time. I had to stay home for more than 3 weeks. I later learned several students had gone to school sick with various illnesses. The most common were influenza A, H1N1, and bronchitis because some parents did not keep their children home. If you are a parent and your child is sick, do not send them to school. Keep them home to rest. Story 39. Those big floats you can sit on in water parks are held in place by big, heavy chains, and some lifeguards will refuse to do their job if children are actively trying to climb on a float while another child is trapped underneath and kicked repeatedly as they try to get out. I do not know how my dad did not get charged after throwing 4 kids aside to free me from under that float. I do not know if it is the same for everyone, but when I drowned, it felt like a fire slowly starting in my chest and spreading through my body until I no longer had the energy to move my limbs. Story 40. As a motorcyclist, do not trust other drivers to follow the rules. Story 41. I was 6 years old and almost drowned. I was holding on to the side of a swimming pool with a friend. She was a good swimmer and had shown me how she let go, went underwater, and swam back up. After she left, I wanted to try and almost did not make it back up. Right before I was about to pass out, I was rescued. I did not try to swim again until I actually learned to swim, but even after learning, I had a fear of open deep water and still will not go into it. Story 42. I was more ready to accept death than I would ever have imagined after facing the idea that I might die. Story 43. You are not special. Mother Nature does not care about you. You are not guaranteed to reach an old age. We are all one idiotic decision away from ending up as a headline or a statistic. Story 44. Human resources were not on my side after I was reprimanded for taking 2 weeks off while I had sepsis during pregnancy. Various organs were shutting down and I was in a high dependency unit for 5 days, but they said it did not sound that serious. Story 45. I was in a bad car wreck at 19 in 1992. I fell asleep while driving after seeing They Might Be Giants. I used to tell people that as long as they were not face down in a ditch, they were okay. I learned that no matter what you plan for, you have absolutely no clue what is past this curve in the road called life. Story 46. High triglyceride levels could indicate prediabetes or even full-blown diabetes. Story 47. Heart disease of varying kinds is pervasive in my father's family. Of the 3 siblings who had children, and among my father's children, at least one cousin in every family has a heart condition. The eldest cousins have atrial fibrillation. The next cousin has bradycardia and a pacemaker. The next has severe atrial fibrillation, had an ablation, and receives annual checks. In another family, at least 2 cousins have had non-fatal heart attacks. I was not told the cause. My father, the youngest, has 2 children, and I found out at 68 that I have bradycardia and a pacemaker. All of it came out of the woodwork when I was complaining on Facebook about spending a very boring weekend in the hospital waiting for surgery on Monday. I came very close to dying, with a resting heart rate of 25 beats per minute and pauses with no heartbeat at all. Some fun. Story 48. Gastroenteritis should not last more than 3 days. A ruptured appendix, however, can cause problems that last for months. If you return from a tropical area and feel feverish, seek medical attention. Malaria will not resolve on its own. Story 49. Kidney cancer often has no symptoms until it is too late. Story 50. Appendicitis does not always cause pain on only one side at first. Can cause pain throughout the abdomen. Story 51. The closest I will ever come to dying was when I got caught in a rip current. I saw my life flash before my eyes. Story 52. Sometimes your body sabotages itself and you will not see it coming. When small unusual symptoms add up, go to the emergency department before you collapse. After a short coma and 6.5 weeks in the hospital, I was diagnosed with thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura and a rare lifelong autoimmune disease with no known triggers. I have since had 4 total events. They have become shorter each time, and my care team and I know what to look for and how to monitor, treat, and pre-treat to minimize damage. I am also in a thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura support group and a post-intensive care syndrome support group to help cope with my new self. It has been 10 years, and while I would prefer not to have this condition, I am glad I am mostly strong enough to manage it. Story 53. When a roller coaster has one lap bar for the whole row instead of individual bars, do not seat small children in the same row as very tall adults, especially in the front row of the Tower of Terror. Story 54. After being at risk of suicide and recovering in the psychiatric unit, I learned to be grateful for my mental health. Life is so enjoyable when you are not constantly battling demons, and I learned to take pleasure in small things. It completely altered my perspective for the better. Story 55. The fever and chills in the early stages of sepsis are bone-breakingly miserable. Once you begin to decompensate, you no longer care about anything. You simply observe yourself dying. Story 56. High blood pressure can cause many organs to gradually fail. Story 57. Persistent headaches that won't go away for years are not normal. Story 58. Not being able to sweat when you should is not cool. It is a sign that something was wrong. My body was too busy trying to stay alive to bother with regulating temperature. Story 59. Do not mess around with fundamental forces of nature, such as electromagnetism. You will find out. Story 60. Never underestimate the power of a river. I went kayaking for the first time on the Illinois River in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I am very inexperienced. Although the surface seemed calm, a recent flood had left debris in the river. I unknowingly entered a whitewater rapid and I tipped over. My swimsuit got stuck underwater and pinned me against a log. My head was underwater and I couldn't catch a breath. My family couldn't help because the current was too strong at that spot. I had to free myself. Story 61. Do not mix melatonin and mushrooms while camping in cold weather. Story 62. You can become septic from a kidney stone. It is also a common cause of death, but is not usually reported as the primary cause. Story 63. Crispy bacon is the way to go. I almost choked on chewy bacon as a kid. Story 64. I had an ultra-rare form of cancer. It was not related to my death. I developed pneumonia and very severe sepsis. They performed a computed tomography scan to examine my lungs and discovered a large mass on my spleen. I had no idea it was there and experienced no pain or discomfort. Story 65. Even an experienced ocean swimmer can underestimate a riptide. On occasion, a dolphin might be there to save you. Story 66. If you are still here, you are supposed to be. It is not your time. Story 67. Heart conditions often lead to crippling depression. Both can be fatal. I had atrial fibrillation that led to heart failure. Even after I recovered physically, depression sank in and left me in dire straits. I am glad to be free of both. Story 68. Do not rely on others for your safety. If you hear things moving, be alert. A crane dropped a container on the top deck. It fortunately skidded across the open hole above us instead of landing on us. Unknown to us, our friend was driving a borrowed car without permission and crashed while showing off. Could have easily killed us. Story 69. I wanted to kill myself. The moment I felt that way, I wanted to tell someone about it and how I felt. So I texted a stranger on Instagram and told her everything and why I wanted to end my life. After that, I realized I am transgender. In short, I found out I was transgender. Sadly, all my funny funeral plans were canceled. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. If you are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please contact local emergency services or your country's crisis hotline. If you are not in immediate danger, consider reaching out to a trusted person or a mental health professional. If you'd like, I can help you make a safety plan or find resources. Are you safe right now? Story 70. Wear a helmet when ice skating, no matter what age you are. I fell on the ice and had a brain bleed. I'm fine now, but I bought a helmet for the next time I go skating. Story 71. Trams in Amsterdam do not stop if you are standing near the tracks and there is no barrier. Story 72. Almost 15 years ago, I nearly died by suicide. Thankfully, I had a heart attack that jolted me awake. It was about -30 degrees Celsius, -22 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was in a small wooden shack. According to the doctor, the cold saved my life. I remember feeling very calm while I was setting everything up. My mind felt like it was in a tunnel and all the pain and hurt I had been feeling before was gone. What I learned from this is that feeling suicidal or having suicidal thoughts can be a coping mechanism. When you feel so much pain, the only thought that seems to stop it is the idea of ending your life. Suddenly, everything stops hurting and you feel in control again. The thought feels real because it helps, but it is an illusion, a mirage. Story 73. I learned the hard way about going too fast down a snowy gravel road because I almost had a moose go through my windshield. I drive a lot differently now. Story 74. Black ice looks exactly like wet asphalt until you are sliding. Story 75. My mother is a true narcissist and did not care that I nearly died from a stroke and a traumatic brain injury. Story 76. See your doctor as you approach age 60 and schedule a heart scan. You can be 68, referee junior high basketball games, work out at Los Angeles Fitness 4 mornings a week, eat well and seem healthy, experience no telltale symptoms, and then die on your couch from blocked arteries. You cannot beat genetics with a healthy lifestyle alone. The $99 heart scan can prevent a 2-week hospital stay and a $500,000 medical bill. Just get it done. Story 77. If your partner strangles you, they are significantly more likely to kill you in the future. In my case, it escalated to having a loaded gun held to my head. Story 78. If you have food poisoning that lasts for more than a couple of hours of intense vomiting with abdominal pain, have your appendix removed right away rather than waiting until you become septic 5 months later. When I saw my surgeon immediately after waking up from the operation, he said, "You are an idiot and you should be dead." He was absolutely right on both counts. Story 79. I have almost died many times, and the main thing I have learned is that it all means nothing. People in power, life itself, and how cool you are ultimately mean nothing. We exist in a vast void and will eventually return to it. On a galactic scale, we barely matter. Why do we act as if we matter when all of us are forgotten within a single century or so? We should care for one another and move forward, but we do not, mainly because of old myths and the basic "you are not like me" mentality. Story 80. Always tie a knot at the end of the rope before rappelling. Story 81. Don't take 160 milligrams of oxycodone with someone who refuses to take you to the hospital. This was many years ago. I no longer use pills, but it was a scary night. Story 82. Do not walk on the edge of a waterfall. The rocks can be slippery. Story 83. Do not assume accidents cannot happen because you are careful and fully aware. Know that when they do occur, you will be caught off guard. Story 84. They told me I would never be able to have children. This was almost 50 years ago. I had a ruptured ovarian cyst that bled into my abdomen and became infected. It took 3 visits to the emergency room before I was finally admitted and diagnosed. There were 2 surgeons involved. One of them told me I was near death. I spent a week in the hospital with a drain in my abdomen. Turned out my uterus was malformed. I had just gotten married 3 months earlier. We divorced. Story 85. This will probably sound silly, but when I was about 12, I was sick and asked my mom for some medicine. She gave me a spoonful of syrup, but instead of pulling it out of my mouth, she tilted the spoon upward, which created a vacuum effect in my throat, and I began choking on the syrup. I panicked and felt like I was dying, gasping for air and tearing up. My mom was laughing and not helping me, as if I were exaggerating. She eventually patted my back enough that I could finally breathe, but in those moments I felt completely alone and stopped trusting her. Even after I told her I felt like I was dying, she kept chuckling and did not seem concerned or take me seriously at my most vulnerable. I know she did not do it on purpose, but I felt she understood her mistake and her ego would not let her apologize or help me right away because she did not want to be blamed. All she could do was laugh. So that was not fun. Story 86. That no one thought I was really sick was a bizarre realization. Afterward, only one friend and my son apologized. Many people ghosted me. Everyone today should have 1 year when they are basically fully bedridden and their only entertainment is a Kindle. They will emerge a different, more knowledgeable person, not necessarily wiser. Story 87. Green is not just the color of baby yellow potatoes. Story 88. Not me, but my husband. Learn the signs of heart failure even if you are only 33. Otherwise, multiple nurse practitioners will give you cough syrup, then prescribe prednisone and keep sending you home. Story 89. Maybe don't ignore what your body is trying to tell you. I had intermittent spotting, night sweats, and general tiredness for a few months. My first thought was, oh neat, perimenopause. Since my mom and sister both started menopause early, I was also under a lot of stress at work, so I attributed some symptoms to that. In early August, I had severe diarrhea for 4 days that worsened each day. On the 4th day, I began vomiting, my hands and feet were like ice, and I could not take a full breath. On the advice of National Health Service 111, I went to accident and emergency. Computed tomography scan and blood tests showed my kidneys were not fully functioning and that I had a mass on my ovary. I was admitted immediately and given intravenous antibiotics for over a week to treat the kidney problems before they could address the mass. I was discharged for 8 days, then readmitted because my blood pressure, pulse, and temperature had risen dramatically. I then learned I had low hemoglobin and anemia and needed 2 blood transfusions. I was also diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism and hypothyroidism, as well as ovarian cancer. Needless to say, I don't remember much of August. I start chemotherapy next Friday to try to shrink the cancer before surgery, provided the pulmonary embolism improves. Story 90. Advocate for yourself in medical situations. Doctors can be dismissive, especially if you are a young woman. Story 91. From watching several older people in my life, I learned that it is better to get joint replacements sooner rather than later. There is such a thing as being too old to safely replace a joint. The older you get, the harder it is to recover from anesthesia and the more vulnerable you are to infections. There are other benefits. The longer you wait, the more you compensate for the joint. You will have a faster recovery with a better range of motion if you have the procedure when the joint is not severely damaged, compared with waiting until you require a replacement or a wheelchair. Long-term pain affects brain function and can hasten cognitive decline. Bad joints and the strain of compensating for them are a major source of chronic pain. Functional joints improve balance and make you less likely to fall. As many as 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 die within a year of fracturing a hip. Story 92. You can survive a hemorrhage caused by a brain lesion, and the things you have to relearn may surprise you. These include your own accent, what your favorite foods and drinks are, how to trust other people again, what is and is not normal regarding illness, your own intuition, how to read people and understand tone of voice, how to trust yourself again, how to emotionally regulate, how to feel your emotions and name them, the way you normally walk, and what is real and what is not, both in sound and mentally and physically. The list goes on. Story 93. I died or came close to dying more than once. Those experiences taught me that death itself is not scary. The in-between is very peaceful, and once you cross into it, you lose all feelings of pain, fear, and sadness. What lies beyond that stage looks even more amazing. I got glimpses but was not able to cross fully over. It is the process of dying that I am not looking forward to going through again. The first few times were traumatic. I reached the other side, found myself free of pain and fear, and was sent back to my broken body where I could feel everything again. I hope that when I eventually die for good, my death will be peaceful and pain-free. I was repeatedly told that I still have a purpose here and that I had a choice to stay and complete it. I chose to stay each time, but I never thought to ask what that purpose was. Now I am living with the disabilities left by almost dying half a dozen times and am struggling. I have ideas about my purpose and how to achieve it, but I am not physically or financially able to accomplish them at this moment. Story 94. Burt's Bees products caused anaphylaxis. I spent 3 days in the emergency room until the cause was identified. Story 95. Drowning is silent and can happen quickly. I was pulled out and resuscitated. But if the teachers had been less vigilant, I would not be here. Story 96. When you are floating in and out of consciousness, you notice hospital staff talking about you as if you are not there. Story 97. Nothing matters except those who love you and those you love. Story 98. Numbness in the hands and feet at the same time is not something to ignore. Story 99. Always stop and look for a train before you step onto railroad tracks. My older brother lived in an apartment across the street from some railroad tracks, and we would cross them to get to the main street to walk to our parents' home when we went for dinner or just to hang out. One day I went through the bushes and onto the track, thinking I had not seen or heard an engine as we crossed. Just as I stepped onto the track, I looked to my right and saw a huge Union Pacific locomotive about 20 feet away. I barely had time to fall backward. I was so scared, but I managed to fall back and avoid being hit by seconds. My brother, who was behind me, was urinating in the bushes, because if he had come right behind me as normal, he would have blocked my fall. Now I always look for a train. Story 100. You can, in fact, overdose on nicotine. I was about 6 years old when I decided to eat my grandfather's entire stash of nicotine gum in one sitting. I do not remember most of it, but it was not a fun experience, and now I have such an intolerance to nicotine that it may as well be an allergy. Story 101. If the vibes are off, it's for a reason. I bought mid-tier steaks from the store for my husband, but I wasn't in the mood for red meat that night. He ended up with severe Escherichia coli poisoning. 2 days later, that meat was recalled. I was absolutely livid. Took him weeks to fully recover. Story 102. Do not climb into a concrete bird bath. When I was a child, my mother had made a concrete bird bath inlaid with glass mosaic pieces. I wanted to get a better look, not knowing the top was not attached to the base, and it fell over and pinned me. I am lucky my parents were outside and my mother saw it happen. Do not turn your back on the ocean. I was lucky to lose only my spare glasses to the waves and not my life when I was a tiny 8-year-old. Recognize the signs of domestic abuse, how it escalates, and how abusers hide their true behavior until you are trapped. Tie the rope closer to the trunk of the tree. This is related to the previous point. I am mostly okay now and have not attempted since. Story 103. I wish everyone would take 15 minutes to learn cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I was involved in a situation a few years ago. Story 104. Staphylococcus infections are serious and can be fatal. Some conditions cannot be treated at home, so please do not be embarrassed to go to the hospital. I needed strong antibiotics for several weeks. Story 105. What your own blood smells like when you are bleeding out and dying. For me, it was sickly sweet and sour, reminiscent of infection but not an actual infection. It is incredibly hard to describe, but it is a smell I will never forget. Story 106. Do not ask questions you do not want the answer to. Do not ask the surgeon how the surgery went if you do not want a blunt reply. I was told I died and was barely brought back to life after bleeding out on the operating table. That will mess you up if you are a 17-year-old and terrified of hospitals. Story 107. That I, at 7 years old, cannot in fact swallow a marshmallow whole. Story 108. No one cares if a doctor messes up a major life-changing surgery. Story 109. I had been overweight and have epilepsy. I lost almost 30 pounds and have been seizure-free for 3 months. Doctors told me that being overweight can increase stress and seizure activity. Before I became motivated, I fell into a deep depression when my husband became ill. I have never felt better in my life. Please take care of yourself. You only have one life. Story 110. None of it really matters. We are all just here for the ride. There is no rhyme or reason to it. We are the ones who make all that up. I still try to find a purpose, but it is hard knowing it does not really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. Story 111. Don't let children play with a rope unsupervised near water, and don't try to be a hero if someone is drowning. My stepbrother said I couldn't swim with my feet tied together like a mermaid. Since it looked easy, I said I could do it with my hands tied behind my back. I swam deeper into the lake like a seal. Another very young child thought it was funny and splashed water on my face when I surfaced to breathe. I inhaled water, panicked, and could not cough and keep my head above water at the same time. My stepbrother tried to lift me from the lake onto a swimming platform via the ladder, princess style, like a groom carrying a bride. He wasn't strong enough and ended up dropping me twice headfirst, so I was upside down in the water both times. He inhaled water himself, and by the time he got me out, my lungs were full and I was about to pass out. If he had just dragged me to shore, literally 4 meters away, and screamed for help, I would have been able to cough the water out. The first thing I said was, "Why didn't you just drag me to shore?" while coughing and retching. He said, "I thought it would be cool if I lifted you up the ladder. We were idiots." Story 112. Always check the chamber for a bullet, even if there is no clip loaded. Story 113. My mother is an abusive parent who has attempted murder. It is that bad. Story 114. Stay on the goddamn trail. I went off the trail for a good reason. My friend had been bitten by a copperhead and managed to disturb a beehive I never even saw. They stung the hell out of me. They were everywhere. My throat closed to about the diameter of a coffee-stirring straw, and I hallucinated all the way to the hospital. By the time we got there, I couldn't even walk under my own power. My friends had to get under each arm and drag me in. I tried to move my feet, but it was like my body had no rigidity left. I passed out once inside. I don't know exactly how close I came to death that day, but goddamn it, I stay the hell on the trail now. Story 115. I would honestly be fine if I died right now. Feeling I have when I am not in danger does not go away when I am in danger. I genuinely am not afraid to die. Story 116. Ice falling off power lines and transformers can be extremely dangerous. One cold morning I was working near a power pole as the ice thawed in the sun. The transformer shed an ice shell that fell exactly where I had been standing moments earlier. The ice was sharp enough to puncture the hard ground like a shovel in loose dirt. Story 117. There are many serious medical conditions that feel like intense gas pain. I learned this after I spent 2 weeks taking Gas X for the blood clots in my lungs after surgery. Story 118. When I was 10, I was on a commercial airplane that dropped from the sky and miraculously landed at the airport. We were all told to brace for impact, and during the 10 minutes or so that we were falling, I had to make peace with the unfair fact that my life might be over. It was one of the worst feelings I have ever had, and it traumatized me for about 20 years. There was a lesson. Life can end for anyone at any moment, so I have the gift of not caring too much about small things and of enjoying the time I have today. That outlook has helped me ever since. Story 119. You will not notice it if you die on the operating table. I coded for about a minute as I was told. Story 120. Trust my intuition always. I can clearly recall 3 times my intuition spoke to me and I listened. Looking back now, if I had not listened, I would have died those 3 times. Story 121. Once, while I was sleeping, I choked on my saliva and they called the hospital. The doctor said it was because of a dream and advised that when I feel like I am drowning, I should turn onto my side in bed. I put it to the test. Story 122. Okay, I did not die, but I couldn't breathe during an endoscopy and I could feel things getting dark. It was different from fainting. It was a fade to black. I had many broken blood vessels on my cheeks, forehead, and around my eyes. I learned I would describe my baseline character as chill. I have learned that some people think I don't care, but maybe it's self-preservation. I will deal with things if and when I need to. Maybe I pace myself. I know this is only about how I feel about myself. When both my children faced events where I thought they were going to die and did not, I was depressed for weeks afterward, thinking of all the what-ifs. It has been almost 20 years since those events, and I can go back to the fear as if it were yesterday. When my spouse had a heart attack and I was not with them, I was scared. Story 123. I learned countersteering on my bike in 2017 and had an accident. Story 124. Always check your tires when you buy them. My brother bought a car and was told the tires were brand new. It was his first car, so it never occurred to him to check them. We ended up in a ditch on the way to family dinner on New Year's. The bald tires were visible to everyone. It terrified us and our parents, and our sister injured her tailbone, but we all survived because he is a careful driver and was going very slowly. Story 125. I experienced an armed robbery and realized that the lead-up to a life-or-death situation can feel like any other day. You can be a peaceful person going about your day when suddenly an outside force bursts in, like the Kool-Aid Man. The experience forced me to confront small fears I had not overcome and also made me grateful for the experiences I had thrown myself into over the years. From that moment, I knew I wanted to keep doing those things and put the pedal to the metal in life. Now I hug my friends and lovers tightly whenever I see them, because it could be the last time either of us sees the other. Story 126. I gave myself serotonin syndrome with a positive medical test and no one around. I did everything I could to survive without going to a hospital. That was 13 years ago. Story 127. Driving has improved my maneuvering because of horrible drivers. I have become safer and smarter after several close calls. Story 128. I had a bowel obstruction and vomited a lot. My abdomen swelled. I did not know what it was. I had 11 more surgeries, including a bowel resection and bowel obstruction repair, before the obstructions finally stopped. Story 129. Hypothermia can be dangerous. While hiking alone in New Zealand, I always carry enough clothes and rain gear when I go into the bush. You can become disoriented and unable to do what your brain knows is a good idea. Luckily, I finally stumbled onto the track I had lost a few hours earlier and made it back to the youth hostel. Story 130. Do not drive out of a car wash too quickly. I was not driving, but we nearly hydroplaned into another car on a hot, dry day. Story 131. I now only eat smooth peanut butter after choking on a piece of peanut from the chunky variety. Luckily, my father jumped into action when he realized what was happening, because I could not speak or make a sound as the peanut was completely lodged in my throat. My husband at the time ignored the whole event. It is one of the many reasons we are divorced. Story 132. If you truly want to die, throw yourself into the ocean. You will find yourself fighting to reach the surface. Arabic proverb. Story 133. I smelled strawberries. 30 minutes later, my workplace called an ambulance for severe breathing problems. I had 100% oxygen, yet I could not breathe. Apparently, I am severely allergic to strawberries. I cannot touch, taste, or smell them without feeling like I am going to die. Story 134. Almost drowning and nearly dying from asthma are terrifying. Not being able to breathe is awful. Story 135. Make the most of each day. The small things are important. Story 136. There is a very real possibility you will either soil yourself or wet yourself, and there is no amount of willpower that can override it. Story 137. The symptoms of a ruptured appendix are not the same as irritable bowel syndrome. If I had waited 36 hours after the initial symptoms, I would be dead now. Thank goodness for the National Health Service. Story 138. During a heart attack, your vision can sometimes become monocular. Story 139. How much blood can a person lose from a head injury? Can be a significant amount, and it is frightening to watch it go down the sink drain. Story 140. Before using a passing zone on a 2-lane highway, make sure no car is coming in the opposite lane. Only pass the slower vehicle ahead in your lane when it is safe. Story 141. Life can be taken away from you at any moment, so live the life you want. Story 142. Don't trust what you think is solid ground around a dairy waste lagoon. Story 143. My grandfather never cared about me because he sat and watched as I almost drowned in a pool. Story 144. Do not believe people on Reddit when they say fasting or ketosis is safe as long as you are not diabetic. Story 145. What choking actually feels like. I was at a party and bit off more than I could chew. Food and water have gone down the wrong pipe many times, but this felt different, like pressure in my chest. I could not swallow or speak, and then I realized I could not breathe. My boyfriend noticed when he asked me a question and I could not get the words out. One hard blow to my back dislodged the food. I had never felt so relieved. I always thought coughing was the main sign of choking, but now I know that if you are able to cough, you are probably fine. Story 146. You can die at any moment from a bizarre accident. I was walking beside a building in winter when I heard a whoosh, followed by a horrible crashing noise right behind me. A blast of wind, snow, and ice hit my back. A ton of snow and ice had slid off the roof and landed on the sidewalk a few feet behind me. By blind luck, no one, including me, was on that stretch of sidewalk. Story 147. I do not like going to my job and do not want to go there anymore. I had a light bulb moment while being wheeled into the operating room. I thought, at least I do not have to go to the office today. I did go back to work, but only remotely. I am done with the office for good. Story 148. I am really hard to kill. I know I tried. I am in a better place now. Story 149. You can get preeclampsia after giving birth. After my last baby, I felt something was off and went to my primary care doctor, who dismissed it as normal postpartum recovery. I kept questioning and posted in a mom's Facebook group. They recognized the symptoms. I went to the emergency department within an hour and was admitted for 2 days with postpartum preeclampsia, which I did not know was possible. I could have had a stroke or worse. Story 150. I could not give plasma. I started to lose consciousness and experienced projectile vomiting when the anticoagulant flowed into my arm. It was a reaction to the citrate anticoagulant. This was not life-threatening, but I could not speak to get the nurse's attention, and it was a very strange sensation to vomit and faint at the same time. Story 151. Sometimes you don't die, and that's awful. 2 separate mental illnesses almost took me. I am ignoring the suicide attempts I made. In May this year, I had near-fatal bradycardia from anorexia. In September, I suffered severe blood loss after deep self-harm, and then accidentally reopened the wound a few days later. I feel like I'm dying constantly, and there is no relief. At those times there was relief. I wasn't even thinking about dying. I was so relaxed and ready to fall asleep. My peripherals numb and my vision almost gone. That was common to both experiences. Felt peaceful. I have tried to get help. I told my doctor the truth. They told me to come back at the end of the year for another checkup. I can't lie down anymore without feeling breathless, and I struggle to sleep because of this. I am afraid and want someone to save me, but I know from experience that when you get close you stop caring. Please God, may that peace come again soon, and may it work out in the only way I see is good. I am really sorry you're feeling this way. If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 for crisis support. Otherwise, please contact your country's suicide prevention hotline or local emergency services. Are you safe right now? If you want, tell me your country and I will help find local resources, or I can help you make a short safety plan. You do not have to go through this alone. Story 152. Quitting alcohol cold turkey is not recommended, depending on your prior level of consumption. Story 153. Touching an electric eel to test how strong the voltage is. At least I know someone will not do that a second time. Story 154. Look both ways when walking. It is self-explanatory why I would say that. Story 155. Firmly grasp the airline when removing it from a compressor. That metal fitting and cord whizzed past my head at Mach speed. My dad just calmly said, "Hope you learned your lesson." Yes, I did, Dad. Story 156. Acid reflux is a sign of a heart attack, even if you think it is just food poisoning. Story 157. Sometimes it is a pretty good thing when you smash your head hard enough to shift your insides. The only reason a tumor that would have killed me within 3 months was discovered. Story 158. Blood loss does not really hurt. You just go to sleep. Story 159. I now know what a pulmonary embolism feels like. I should have died the first time. I took myself to the emergency room the second time. Story 160. During the onset of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, thyroid test results may appear normal for a short time before thyroid function declines. Story 161. Do not mess with riptides. My brother and I were pulled out by one when I was 14 and he was 12. Adrenaline is a crazy thing because I got us both back to safety. I was so exhausted I could not get up after we were back on shore. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.